Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are taking a look at another deck profile. This time we're hitting up agents. I've been so patiently waiting for this new support to come out. This stuff is coming from the OCG Structure Deck R series, imported into our Ghost from the Past set. It's awesome. Their cards are actually not that expensive. Some of the other cards can be expensive, though. We'll talk about that when we get there. But I just want to say before we jump into the video, shout out to Konami. I know they don't get shout outs very often. They get a lot of ridicule, but I think Structure Deck R series in the OCG is the single best series of products that Konami is releasing right now. I think every single one pretty much has just been hot as shit. They've been so good. They have the nostalgia factor. They've got 8 new cards of support per new archetype that they're throwing in there, and it's awesome. So they're doing a great job. Shout out to them. And yeah, without further ado, let's jump into this. I've always loved agents. They have such awesome designs in their artwork. They obviously have the mythology type lore, which is awesome. And now they're actually competent. They weren't even a competent deck for the last whatever years, 10 or so years. And finally happy that they can actually play. So let's jump into this thing, starting off, of course, with our monster lineup. Let's just get in with the agents here real quick, the small agents. We've got triple copies of Earth, triple copies of the new guy, Neptune. This guy's awesome. He's kind of just like a monster reborn, but he can also summon an agent from the hand as well. And if he's banished, he'll search you a pretty much just entirely free sanctuary in the sky also. So this guy's really awesome, really a necessary extender that the deck needed. Then you have Venus, of course. We have the one agent of destruction, Venus, and of course we have our triple shiny testicles here that of course you have to be playing if you're going to play the Venus stuff. So yeah, explaining some of this stuff real quick. You kind of know what Earth does. He searches an agent. Your primary search target now is Neptune. Unless you open him, then you search Venus, because Neptune can discard himself to summon an agent from hand, which will just be the Venus. So you'll already have a tuner, you'll be able to summon Venus, and then you'll get 3 more shine balls, and you'll just have a ton of material to get linking off with, synchroing off with, whatever you want to do there. Really, really strong. Then you have Agent of Destruction Venus. She's really cool. So the idea with her is, if you don't know, just to kind of skip ahead a little bit, our main extra deck boss monster now, the new guy, Master Flare, he sends any card that any agent or card that lists Sanctuary in the Sky from deck to grave, or monster, I think specifically, and then he copies its effect. So if you already did your play, kind of like how I just wrote it out, where if you open to Earth Neptune or Earth Venus, and you've already used Venus, she can actually summon shine balls from banish and graveyard, and then when they're linked off from that point, or when they leave the field from that point, they actually go back into the deck. And so the idea would be, you go through, you use all the shine balls. Once you get him in rotation, then you use his effect, sending the second Venus, and that can get out all 3 shine balls again. It makes for a ton of link material / synchro material, and you're just able to pop off super, super hard. One card that's missing from here that I'm sure you might have noticed at this point is I'm not playing Diviner of the Herald. Card's expensive. I don't have it yet. So it's something that probably should be in the deck, because it is overall, as a 1-card starter, the best 1-card starter you can play in the deck. Just the downside, because it is pretty expensive. But I do think this variant does a pretty good job at covering up that weakness, because you lose a little consistency, but also that card, just playing that card means you had to play 2 more bricks in your deck in the form of Trias Hierarchia and Buten, which is obviously not ideal. And it also, you end up with a lot of normal summons, because unless you want to cut down, I've thought about it, if I did play it, I might cut down a Venus, because at that point you don't really want to open Venus that much. You want to just be sending her for your Synchro Monsters effect most of the time. But again, it really just depends. But this is my lineup for these small agent monsters there. From there, we move to some of our bigger monsters. We have the 1 Master Hyperion and the 1 Majesty Hyperion. This looks a little strange here, I'm sure. 1 and 1, I think, for me. So my biggest thing is 1 Master Hyperion, super recyclable. There's multiple cards that can get fairies back from grave. And then you have Majesty Hyperion. This guy's actually just a better form of Master Hyperion. The only downsides of him is he's a little bit smaller attack-wise, and he doesn't remove stuff from the field. He actually moves stuff from the grave. But all in all, he can come back by banishing stuff in grave. So if he's in grave, he brings himself back, whereas Master Hyperion has to be in hand. So I think because of that, that's why I like one. You summon him, you synchro him off, you link him off, he gets engraved. You're just going to do it again next turn. You don't need a second one. So I don't really understand people playing more than one of him or Hyperion. I think they're just both awesome extenders in their own right. They're level 8, which is so clean because we have a lot of level 2 extenders, and our best synchro monster in this deck is level 10. But they're great. And I think 1 and 1 is the perfect number for me. So some additional extenders. I had slots for extenders and I wanted to look at stuff, and it came down for me to either the Korriban here or the Divine Spirit Logeth, or Protecting Spirit Logeth, this card here. There's just some weird clunkiness. There were downsides to both, but there were bonuses to both. Korriban just summons itself first, so it is like a Cyber Dragon, but once you commit anything else to the field, it is kind of dead, so that's like the downside of Korriban. Whereas with Loagith, one, she's an awkward level. Being level 7 is actually really weird in this deck because you want to make 10s, but the deck doesn't really make use of level 3 tuners. There's really not a ton of level 3 tuners the deck is going through at any point to really make a 10 kind of cleanly. So she ends up being a good fairy extender, but as far as synchroing goes, she doesn't really help you too much with that. She also has the bonus effect to get you like a banish of a face-up card. That's a really nice. But at the end of the day, that wasn't enough to like counterbalance like the kind of clunkiness that this card kind of added to the deck. So I ended up going with Korriban instead. But this card has been good for me, honestly. And level 5 is a little bit cleaner because of some of our other extenders actually go through level 5s sometimes. So that can happen. And I almost want to play this at 3, but I'm at 40. And I was like, do I really want to go to 41 just to play a third Korriban? I think I'll just play 2 for now. But it works, and it's a fairy, so, you know, consistency and the ability to play through interruption. This card's also kind of nice, depending on the kind of deck you're playing against. Just to summon it, go battle phase immediately, and potentially bait an interruption without even normal summoning can actually be pretty huge. All right, moving into additional fairies. We have the 1 Archlord Christia, and then we have our 3 Herald of the Orange Light. Christia is awesome. I think you probably have to be playing it. It's like the single most powerful thing your deck does as far as hindering your opponent from playing, so I think the deck does it pretty well. I mean, this is about as seamlessly we've ever seen a deck be able to make use of Christia, and so it's really good. I've also done a lot of test hands where I'm opening this card, and it's just so easy to like manipulate your grave because of stuff like your Majesty and your Master Hyperions just banishing stuff from grave for free, and just to kind of manipulate the grave. And when you're ready, drop the Christia, and it's going to win you duels. Like, you're going to have duels where you literally play a meta deck, and because they don't open any specific cards to deal with Christia, they just like scoop immediately, and that could be your only interruption. And then Orange Light, we play so many fairies. This card's probably just mandatory. Your deck's also fairly normal summon dependent, so being able to have like another protective card other than like Called by the Grave to be able to just kind of handle any scary hand trap on your normal summon is very, very huge. And then for the rest of the defensive cards, hand trap wise, you're looking at Triple Ash and Double Bell. These seem to be like the consensus best hand traps in the format right now, just with Despia seeming to be the best deck in the game right now. Bell hitting them pretty consistently, and Ash. And Bell hits other stuff too. It can even protect you as well. You know, if you're getting Called by the Grave, random cards like Ice Dragon's Prison versus like back row decks. This card actually ends up being somewhat cool in those kind of roles as well, but just generic cards, don't need to explain them too much. And then we get to the spells. For the agent spells, we have triple copies of Sacred Waters in the Sky, 1 the Chorus in the Sky, and 1 Sanctuary in the Sky. These cards are all awesome in their own individual ways, except for this card. This card sucks, but you have to play it as an engine requirement. It's one of the bricks in the deck for sure. But because you search it for free, essentially off of any line that kind of includes your Neptune, you play it because the deck needs you to get this either on field or in the graveyard to make a ton of your effects just like way better. So it raises the ceiling of the deck. This card's an insane consistency card. It searches any Sanctuary in the Sky or monster that lists it in its text. So this adds you your Earth, which is your starter. This can add Neptune to extend. The only thing it doesn't add is I don't believe it can search Venus. So because she does not list Sanctuary in the Sky in its text. So a little bit clunky there, but everything else kind of works out. You can search like the big boys as well, your Hyperions. But yeah, really good card. I will say one thing that the deck feels like it's missing is it feels like it's missing one more really good main deck extender agent monster. Right now, Neptune is huge, but he is like your first option. Your standard play with Earth is Earth grab Neptune, which means, you know, once you try to use Neptune, he's a harder once a turn, so he's gone. So like as far as playing through interruptions, if you had this card also in your hand at that point, like what's the extender you're searching now? Because you just went through Neptune. There's no other extender this is really searching aside from maybe one of the Hyperions, but like that's not ideal. It's not great. It might get you a little bit further, but not like, it's not amazing by any means. So meh. The deck feels like it's one really good agent extender away from being like a lot better. And then this card's awesome. Pay 1,000 to target a fairy, any fairy in grave, add it to hand. And then if Sanctuary in the Sky is on field or in grave, you can add a banished card that mentions Sanctuary in the Sky, which usually ends up being your Neptune. So it's like add Neptune and another fairy from grave. So it's just a +1, amazing follow-up card. I love this card. This card comes up a lot of times when you get into grind games. All right, so here's something you're not gonna like for sure. But here's the thing. With Diviner, if you're not playing Diviner, I think you're probably going to run into a fair amount of consistency issues, because if you don't see Earth or you don't see Venus plus an extender, you are kind of just in a rough spot. And so you go from like 9 starters with just like the Sacred Waters, your Venus, and your Earth to 12 by playing this, because this, you know, if you're banishing 6, you have a very high chance of hitting one of those 3. Or at least having enough extenders to like just get into Master Flare, and that can make it happen in certain hands. But yeah, it's tough. And honestly, I don't love resolving this card for 6, because banishing that many cards from your extra deck does make your extra deck feel a lot smaller. But to be honest, most hands you're going through like 3 or 4 extra cards in turn 1, so you're not going crazy. Like you're still gonna have 5 more cards usually in the extra deck, depending on the turn 1 combo you do, even after banishing 6. But it's definitely a very necessary consistency buff, especially if you're not playing Diviner. If you're playing Diviner, that's more copies of starters that like you'll be able to see, so that's fine. But if you're not playing Diviner, I think you can run into consistency issues, so that's why I ended up running this. So I hate to break it to you, like if you're not playing Diviner, you might have been like, whoa, it's like a budget list. It's kind of budget, but like, I don't know. For me, I don't have Diviner yet, even though it's cheaper than Prosperity, because Diviner's only good in like 3 or 4 decks. Prosperity's good in like half the decks in the game. So I had much easier, you know, justifying it in my head how to buy Prosperity instead of Diviner. All right, so for some additional extenders here, we have 2 copies of Ready Fusion and 1 Instant Fusion. This is the ratio. You shouldn't be playing triple Ready, because why would you? It means if you drew 2, 1 would be dead guaranteed, whereas if you draw a Ready Fusion plus Instant Fusion and you have 2 Instant Fusions in the extra, you can resolve both, so that's way better. And also, depending on what you want to play, Instant Fusion could also gives you the ability to play other Instant Fusion targets as well. That could give you a little more extra utility. But just good extenders. They're usually summoning a tuner for you to just keep your plays going. And yeah, we'll get to those in the extra. The only downside with these, I would say, is that because of something like Herald of the Orange Light, these not being fairy monsters themselves, I mean, in hand, means that like it is a little bit more awkward with orange, because it just kind of lowers the count a little bit. Obviously, we could have been playing the 3rd Korriban, we could have been playing the the Protecting Spirit Logiths as generic, you know, fairy extenders. But it's not the end of the world. Like, it's not that bad. We still play like 20 fairy names in the deck, and obviously more searchability than just those 20. So it's pretty easy to get it set up. 1 Monster Reborn. This is just an insane extender. I mean, I don't really need to explain this. Just being able to like reborn a Master Flare later in the game that your opponent might have added is like obviously so impactful. That's like, it's such a high ceiling play at that point. And then obviously other stuff. Getting a tuner back from grave to extend into like Hauk plays can be cool. And the one called by, just an offensive card, and the last card we play is 1 Fallen Sanctuary. I love this card. I go through this card as much as possible, because stuff like Forbidden Droplet is super popular right now. Stuff like Dark Ruler is fairly popular on the side right now, because it's pretty good versus Despia. I just don't want to lose to those big side deck cards. If your board is like Christia, Master Flare, and I don't know, whatever other interruption you might have ended on, but it's usually a monster, like 1 Droplet beats that with enough discards that your opponent doesn't mind. 1 Dark Ruler beats that board. Having this means that your opponent has to throw resources at with a droplet, with a dark ruler, and then they have to worry about beating this interruption. And this gets you a follow-up. You know what this card does? On activation, it sets a Sanctuary in the Sky or any spell trap that mentions it. So either a Waters to search again next turn, or a Chorus in the Sky to get double add backs. Very good. This card also counts a Sanctuary on the Sky on the field, and once per turn you can banish a fairy from grave to just negate an effect monster on the field. So it's an interruption, it's a follow-up, and it helps you meet right criteria for having like Sanctuary in the Sky on the field or in grave, which is huge. This card is so good, and it helps you just set up boards that don't auto lose to Dark Ruler or Droplets, which are just always popular. They just seem like they're always played. So I didn't want to auto lose to those. Let's get into the extra deck. The only Link one I play is Almirage right now. I probably would play a Link Spider if I could find more space, but I'm definitely working around with the extra deck right now. But yeah, Almirage is important because the standard play is like go normal summon Earth, link Earth off for Almirage, and then you go discard Neptune, which is what you search off of Earth, to summon it back. That's materials for Hulk at least, and then, you know, that's something. There. 2 copies of Protector of the Agent's Moon, 1 copy of Herald of Mirage Lights, and 1 copy of Halki Fibrax for the Link 2s. Moon I like a lot. You're usually just using it to dump the Majesty Hyperion, because you'll probably already have an agent in grave. Majesty can banish something to come back, and that gets you material for the Parshath Link, which is very good as well. And it's good. It's also a removal card, funny enough. It can tribute a fairy monster to target a card your opponent controls destroyed. So really nice card. It's also 1800, so it's pretty big. I like this card a lot. Herald of Mirage Lights in weird hands where like you kind of played out your hand. You're kind of just left with like 2 random shine balls on the field that you couldn't really make great use of. Sometimes you just make a Herald of Mirage Light and it's a spell and trap negate. So pretty cool. And then Hulk. This card isn't really, you're not doing like Hulk lines because we're not playing a Rorodon, we're not playing the Despot or anything like that. So making this card is not like singularly going to get you to a play. There are ways to build the deck that way, and I'll look at that a little more later on. But for now, this card is mainly to like, 1, get you another body for link climbing, but also because even if you pass with this on the field, you can tag it out into the in-archetype Tuner Synchro, and then that card's like a Book of Moon on the opponent's turn. So just making this sometimes just adds a Book of Moon to your board, which is pretty cool, actually. So yeah, that's it for the Link 2s. For the Link 3s, I have double Celestial Night Lord Parshath. Sorry, I don't have the second one. I thought I had 2, but I only have 1 right now. And I thought I had, yeah. I took out Unicorn for something else, but yeah. 2 of him. The reason I like 2 of him is 1, I'm playing Fallen Sanctuary. Some people do not. So that means in 1 turn, you could make this, send something to grab Sanctuary, or ideally you could make Master Flare, send 1 copy from, because he can send from deck or extra deck to copy the effects, and that includes Parshath. So you can send him with Master Flare to search Fallen Sanctuary, and then with the second one, you could search like Christia. So that gets you like a Monster Negate plus Christia, which is obviously very strong. And so the second one does come up sometimes, especially in the grind game, because that's like how you can seal away duels, is by resolving the second one. And the Link 4 is your defensive option for when you resolve Shine Ball plays with Master Flare to just, you have a ton of Link materials to send on a 2 to 4 material Apo, and then access code, just OTKing people. This plus like a regular Master Hyperion is game. For the Synchros, I'm on double Master Flare right now and 1 of the Pluto. Master Flare is really good. I don't even know if he's necessary at 2, but my idea was if I try to do a play with him turn 1 and he gets negated, he is still an interruption, but if my opponent clears him, I might just be in a position where I'm like, oh, what's my follow-up? I need a powerful follow-up play to go into. So I like having the second one. It feels good having the second one, but if you do have money for Baronne de Fleur, you could easily play that. I know a lot of people play it because sometimes you can make 2 level 10s in turn 1, and that's why people do it, because you can end Master Flare with the, whatever, 2 or 3 interruptions he got you, with a Baronne de Fleur next to him, just for that guaranteed extra negation. It's probably correct to play it if you have access to it. I do not at the moment. Waiting on a reprint there, but yeah. And then Pluto's awesome. So he just like targets a monster and flips it face down. But as long as Sanctuary in the Sky is either on field or in grave, it's a quick effect. So being able to tag into him because he's a tuner synchro off of Hulk, and then being able to just quick book things can actually be a really powerful, unexpected interruption. Your opponent just sees that you left like Hulk on the field, and they're like, wow, that's weird. And then you tag it out for that, and then they're like, oh, I get it. The only Exceed I play is one Hope Harbinger. There's actually a fair amount of hands where you end up going through summoning Master Hyperion and Majesty Hyperion in the same turn, and when you do, it's just super easy to make this, because otherwise, like, what are you doing with these two? Unless you have a bunch of extra level 2 tuners, you're not making 10s. So you want to make this, and also like being able to pair this with something like your Mirage Lights, because it's only 600 attack, so like obviously going battle phase can actually be pretty scary to clear it, but this card controls the battle phase, very sweet. And then for our fusion targets, we have one copy of Alvain, the Essence of Vanity, and one Sea Monster Theseus. Really cool, they're both tuner fusions. Alvain's really nice because it's also a fairy, and level 2 is the perfect level, because as long as you make it to Moon, Moon is going to get you to Majesty Hyperion, and then this is just the level 2 tuner to get you to the Master Flare, which is great. And then this card is for a couple of other instances where, I guess if you open like Korobane, that's just level 5. So if you just open Korobane with any of the fusions, it's just Master Flare. And that's without normal summoning. You're already like potentially baiting on interruptions, and you already have like an interruption in Master Flare on the field. So really good. That's the reason why I'm considering playing a triple Trickstar, a triple Korobane, because then at least you have potentially like 2 3-ofs that if you open them together, it's really doing a good job baiting stuff before committing to the field. And that's also even another reason why to play Baronne de Fleur, because even if you had a good normal summon, that means those 2 cards would just make Baronne without even using your normal, and then it's just protecting the rest of your play there. And then obviously that's really good. So, yep. Really, really cool. That's it for the main and extra. This deck's really sweet. I really love the way that it plays. It can feel a little clunky at times, and like as far as engine requirements, like the fact that you have to play the Shine Balls, you probably should be playing the Weird Venus. You have to play that, and like Christia is too good not to play. Although Christia's not an entire brick. Like drawing it, you can almost always make really good use out of it. But this is the downside to the deck, I would say right here. It's just like, if you're going to play the Venus variant of the deck, you are inherently going to have to play 5 bricks, essentially. Now, these 4 do a good job at making stuff like Herald of Orange Light a little more alive, because they're easy discards with that. But still, you're not always going to have orange, and these can contribute to like really bad bricky hands. You never want to see these. So maybe down the line, like I said earlier, I might look at a synchro-oriented build with like where it just making Halki Fibrax gets you to a good amount of stuff. Or I might look at also playing a list that maybe entirely drops the Venus package. Because if you drop Venus, I know you're losing that starter, but like you play Diviner instead, you also get to take out these 4, because there's no reason to play any of these 4 if you're not playing Venus. And so maybe this would be the only brick in the deck at that point. I'm not exactly sure how it would function, though. I have to mess around with it a little more here, but obviously this is the first build. These are just my overall thoughts on it. It's a really cool deck. I hope you guys feel the same on it. They're so cool. Konami's done a great job with all the structure decks, and I can't wait to see what they do with like the Crystal Beast and the Dark World ones. Those are next up on the block, and I'm very excited. But that's going to do it for me here today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on Agents. Let me know your thoughts on this build. And I honestly want to know what you guys are thinking about Diviner of the Herald specifically. I've seen some people who don't like it. I've seen some people who do. I'm torn on it, and I don't think if I'm torn on it, it's worth spending the, whatever it is, 150 bucks for the playset right now, especially if I'm only torn and I'm not like 100% sure that it's the best move. Let me know your thoughts down below. I'm really curious, but I'm out of here. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more deck profiles. I got some Code Talker stuff coming up very soon because of Heat Soul, and then we're looking around the corner to Dimension Force already. I got a bunch of profiles coming from that set as well. So stay tuned. Subscribe if you haven't. I will see you in the next video. Peace.